Hello everyone. In this quick tutorial video, I will go over how to set up a Google Doc in MLA format and also how to download that Google Doc and save it to the desktop of a computer to be moved to a flash drive if necessary, or uploaded to an assignment in a learning management system such as Canvas, Moodle, or Blackboard. So you see here that I already have logged into my Google Docs. Google Docs is a free word processing software that's available online, and of late I've migrated over to this for most of my writing and research writing purposes because it's saved on the cloud. And what that means is every time I type on this, it saves automatically, and I can access it on any computer that allows me access to the internet. And this is really helpful because if I want to work on something, I can work on it at home, and then when I go to the office, I can work on it there, and all I have to do is log into Google. I don't even have to worry about saving it and hitting save every time. So in order to set up an MLA document in Microsoft Word, there probably are some templates here, but I'm just going to ignore the fact that those might exist and go ahead and set up one based on what I know about MLA and how to format in Google Docs. And I think this is really beneficial. I opened a new document, as you see, to practice, because by doing this you'll learn how to format all sorts of things with Google Docs, and different citation styles require different formatting. You know, some teachers will want you to bold titles, even though MLA and APA no longer require that. So this is something to keep in mind, the usefulness of actually going through and learning all the steps instead of pre-using a template. Now, almost always up here where it says untitled document, that's the name of the large document. I almost always use that opportunity to title this whatever the assignment is or the notes are. So for this instance, I'm just going to title it MLA Formatting Lecture Document. But say you have an assignment that's an exemplification essay or an essay on poetry, you could write that in there too. It's just a way to help you know what it is and how to organize it. And I also like to usually put some sort of date in to help me also organize this. One of the things I know about MLA, for example, is that right now we're in 8th edition. In a few years they'll probably update the manual, change the rules a bit, and so I'll have to re-record some of these lectures, and by putting that date there I'll know what edition of MLA I'm using. So once I've done that, I hit enter and it saves, and you see right here that it's saving automatically, and it's saved in my Google Drive. Now the next thing I need to do, MLA requires a standard format for fonts, and it's usually going to be Times New Roman. That may change in the next few years as people are more conscientious now about being ADA compliant. If you don't know what ADA compliance is, that's being able to put fonts on that help people with dyslexia or help people use screen readers. And Times New Roman is not always the best font for this. However, right now it is still the standard. It may change over time. Just be aware that these things change from time to time. So the next thing I need to make sure that I do is I need to make sure that my line spacing is double, and I need to make sure that I have a page number. So I double click up here where I put my cursor, and it brings up what's called the header. And then I'm going to go over to Insert, and I'm going to scroll down to Page Numbers. And MLA requires that the page number appears on every single page in your right-hand corner, the right-hand corner of the screen. But you notice there that that didn't work, so I need to go in and make sure I have this correct. Let's try this again. See how it keeps doing that. So if that happens, one of the options I have is I can go over here and move my cursor in front of the number, and I can tab over. And then you also have to include your last name. And you can see, because of some formatting issue here, when I do that, it moves down. So I got to figure out what's going on with that. But for now, that's sufficient. Then I click back down here. Now the next thing, that's the header where your last name and page number's there. And see how it's 12 point? You need to make sure it's 12 point as well. I forgot to mention that. The next thing I'm going to put is my name. Following that, and see how it's preset the double space, I'm going to put my instructor's title and name. So one of the things I make sure to emphasize to students during class time is to always make sure you know what the title is, our preferred title for your instructor or professor is. Some professors are doctors and they prefer to be called doctors. Some are visiting lecturers. Some prefer to go by Mr. Some prefer to go by Miss. Some prefer to be called professor. So it really changes from faculty member to faculty member. And it's just a good idea to ask. Most people should not be offended by you asking. Now the next thing you need to also find out, and it's going to be different from institution to institution and course to course that requires MLA, is you need to know the course name, and then the name usually includes like a number. So sometimes, like in a Composition 1 class, it might be 101, it might be 1010, it might be 1301. It just depends on the institution, and you should know that from your schedule. For our sakes, I'm just going to put 101 here because that is a standard name used at many institutions. Now the next thing that I really appreciate students doing, some faculty members might not do this, is I also ask students to include their section number, and you know, with Comp 1 classes, some institutions have hundreds of those sections, so they'll even code them using letters as well. So just find out what your section code is and enter it. Now MLA is very specific about date format. It has a numerical date, and typically the full month is spelled out, although I have seen it where it's acceptable with a shorthand month and then a numerical year. And I do recommend that you put the 4-digit year. And then you space down and you use up here for the paragraph formatting to center, and you would place your title here. Now one of the things I want to recommend in this video too, and something to keep in mind, but always check with your professor or faculty member first to make sure that they don't want you to do something different. But I'm going to recommend, at least in composition and in literature courses, that you make this title right here an interesting title. Something that would grab your reader's attention and also give them an idea concerning the topic that you're discussing. I typically don't like it when students title the paper what the assignment is, or title the paper what the rhetorical mode is for that class. That sort of thing is boring. It makes the paper uninteresting, and it really illustrates to me, it communicates to me as a reader that the student doesn't particularly care about what they have written, and that's not the sort of signal you want to send your teachers. So after you have set that up, you have to go back in here and left justify again. You hit tab, and now the student can start typing their essay. Now, keep in mind that every time you start a new paragraph, which is the beginning of a new idea or new subtopic, you need to indent. I know a lot of online writing and default online word processors no longer use indentation. They use an extra space between paragraphs, and that would be sufficient for like an email or a blog. But most teachers are still taking these papers in hard copy as well, and so indentation is still a standard for things like MLA. Now, once you have completed the paper, if it is a paper that requires research, you need to remember that the last page of this file, of this document, needs to include your works cited page. And in that works cited page, you will subtitle it works cited. Notice that the subtitle that I have on this document is not bold, it's not italics, it doesn't say references. For MLA, we just use the words works cited. The only things that appear in these citations that would follow will be works cited entries for items you've quoted in the paper. So sometimes you want to necessarily quote things that you use to research or form ideas. You would only include works cited entries for items that are also cited in text in your paper. And in another video, I'll talk about in-text citation and works cited entries because they're specific depending on the type of source that you are citing. Now, once you start entering works cited entries, it's important that you can see I'm trying to mess with this up here. It's important that you set up hanging indents for these, which you see how I just did that, hopefully. And a hanging indent is just a way for us to see, to really highlight the identifying information in the works cited entry. So if you know anything about in-text citations in MLA and also APA, is generally speaking the author or the editor or the organization that created the text is going to be the first piece of information you encounter. So if I am looking at something like one of my favorite books, Northrop Frye's Educated Imagination, his name, the reason we have the hanging indent there is his name is the first thing that the reader encounters in the works cited page. So when I look at the in-text citation, Frye will be what appears either in the introductory clause or the parenthetical citation that concludes the quotation or paraphrase. And by doing that, my reader will see the name, it'll jump out, and it'll be easy to identify the author's name. That's one of the most important things. The purpose of citation styles, in large part, is to help us, other researchers, track the research that we're reviewing and to improve our own research. So you can kind of see there what a short in-text citation for our works citation would look like for a book. So you see how all this is. Now, something I noticed here that is kind of jumping out at me, and you may have noticed as well, is that for some reason this font doesn't match up with this font. So I need to go back and double check this, and it's what I feared. I hadn't changed the font before, and it's a relatively easy thing to correct. I just corrected it. So that's pretty much the basics of setting up your template for MLA formatting wise. Again, like I said, in a future video, I'll talk about in-text citation. Now, once you've typed the whole paper, you've revised it, you edited, you had other people look at it, you might need to download it to print it or download it in order to re-upload it and submit it to a learning management system like Canvas or Moodle or a Blackboard. So in order to do that, you just go to File and you go to Download, and then you have all these different formats here. Now, the two main formats in my classes that I have students often use are Microsoft Word, because that should open in any computer that has Microsoft Word, or PDF. I have leaned more heavily toward PDF for submissions of graded drafts because PDFs do not deformat across file extensions, and nobody can mess with them basically once they're saved. So once I click on PDF, that's what I'm going to show you all. you'll see I'm using Google Chrome for my browser. You might be using Safari or Microsoft Edge or Internet Explorer. Any of those are going to have different things that pop up once it downloads. But you can see it downloaded here. And I just right-click on it and show in folder. That way I know where it is. And you can see it downloaded to my download folder. And I usually like to make sure these files are moved to a folder that I can use. So now you see I moved it over to my OneDrive, I believe is where it should be. Let's double check that. See, it's saying removed because it opened. So I'm going to go through that process again. PDF, and you see it came over here, and then show in folder, and see it's in downloads. Now I am going to move it for just our ease of discussion over here to the computer desktop so I can find it. And there it is right here, PDF MLA formatting. And then I always recommend for students, I'm not going to name it by a class, but I'm going to name this Lecture Videos 2020. You know, create a folder for your classes on your home computer that you can use, or on your Google Drive, or on your OneDrive if you're using cloud drives, and make sure you download these files to that folder. By doing that and keeping everything in one place, you'll be able to use that then to easily upload assignments. Okay, so I hope you found this video educational and insightful. And if you have any questions, obviously you can email me. There's an email on the YouTube page for this, but most of my students will get this directly in their learning management system, and they'll be able to email me directly through there, or comment on a discussion forum or on announcements. I look forward to hearing from you, and again, apply this, make sure you've got it.